Diahann Carroll was a groundbreaking figure in the entertainment industry. As a black performer, she faced prejudice and backlash from various quarters, but she never allowed that to diminish her passion for her craft. However, her personal relationships often weighed heavily on her, making it difficult for her to fully enjoy her success. Born on July 17, 1935 in the Bronx, New York City, Diahann Carroll did not always possess the confidence she radiated later in her career. Carroll's family faced significant financial struggles, yet her parents were deeply captivated by the upper echelons of African American society. They aspired to elevate their status, but this desire led to one of the most heart-wrenching moments of Carroll's childhood. When she was just a toddler, her parents abandoned her, leaving her in North Carolina with her aunt. In a cold and calculated decision, they assessed their situation and concluded that they could not afford to care for Carroll. They made the difficult decision to leave their child behind in order to focus on improving their financial situation for a year. Eventually, Carroll's parents returned for her and the family moved to Harlem. In this environment, her parents' determination to succeed greatly influenced young Carroll. Although she described Harlem as a scrappy neighborhood, her parents treated her like a princess. They encouraged her to participate in school plays and take piano lessons, shaping their daughter to be respectable despite her background. Above all, they wanted to give Carroll every opportunity to rise above her circumstances. However, ironically, this led her to experience many childhood hardships. At school, the way Carroll presented herself made some of the other kids treat her harshly. A group of girls at school became particularly interested in Carroll and once followed her all the way home. They only left when Carroll's mom called the authorities. The next day, however, things took a terrifying turn. The girls confronted Carroll and began to tear out clumps of her curly hair. Despite the horrific experience, there was a small silver lining. A guidance counselor recommended that Carroll switch schools, which ultimately changed her life for the better. Carroll auditioned for the opportunity to attend Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts. As the long name suggests, the school is extremely prestigious. Carroll was accepted after demonstrating her piano skills, and she soon began to thrive there. By the time she turned 15, she was taking her first steps towards stardom. Carroll got her first big break when a friend took a photo of her and sent it to Ebony magazine. Carroll did not expect anything to come from her application, but to her surprise, 6 months later, Johnson Publications, the owners of Ebony, requested an interview. Nowadays, it might seem obvious that Carroll got the job, but during the meeting, she made a significant mistake that almost jeopardized her chances. Eager to impress the publication, Carroll showed up inappropriately dressed for the occasion, wearing a gray taffeta cocktail dress paired with a lavender straw hat, matching lavender gloves, and a veil. She even oiled her legs beforehand. Carroll considered it a complete fashion disaster, but luckily the editor for Ebony looked past that and hired her anyway. With that opportunity, Carroll found herself stepping into a whole new world. As she immersed herself in the fashion industry, she not only built a reputation with her fabulous photo shoots, but also formed deep connections with other successful Black women. Their fire and determination left a lasting impression on her. Carroll didn't realize it yet, but her experiences were beginning to turn her into an activist, which had gotten her into trouble more than once. She soon had the opportunity to join a show called Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, which was basically the America's Got Talent of its time. Carroll participated as a singer and managed to impress the audience with her voice. Unfortunately, things took a dark turn when Carroll and her mom went to meet Godfrey shortly after her appearance on the show. Godfrey's treatment of her mom shook Carroll to her core. Not only did Godfrey shamelessly flirt with her mother, but he also made several tasteless and shocking jokes about slavery. Carroll, unwilling to let Godfrey continue to demean her mom, snapped at him, "I don't think my mom appreciates jokes like that." Her words completely caught Godfrey off guard. For a moment, it seemed like Carroll's emerging career might be over, but instead, Godfrey scheduled her to appear on next week's show. Just like that, Carroll's talent, work ethic, and no-nonsense attitude changed the course of her future. This opportunity transformed the trajectory of Carroll's future. Thanks to her natural talent, strong work ethic, and no-nonsense attitude, the owner of the Latin Quarter assigned her to a manager named Chuck Woods, who quickly became a mentor, taskmaster, and second family to her. Woods not only helped Carroll perfect her singing voice, but also guided her in refining her image. He ensured that she exuded style and class. Carroll eventually got the chance to audition for the starring role in the film Carmen Jones in 1954. The audition turned out to be an absolute disaster. During the tryout, Carroll performed alongside James Edwards, who was described as a terribly worldly and seductive man. However, she struggled to handle the adult undertones of the scene. To make matters worse, Dandridge received an Academy Award nomination for her role, while Carroll ended up playing one of Dandridge's sidekicks. Unfortunately for Carroll, this was not the only disappointment Hollywood had in store for her. During the filming of Carmen Jones, Edwards began to pursue her romantically. He was not only much older than Carroll, but also married. Additionally, Edwards exhibited controlling behavior. At one point, he pressured Carroll into undressing and then left her alone in a locked hotel room. Carroll, unaware of the situation, allowed herself to be left in a room without any clothes for an entire day. Poor girl. Eventually, an opportunity to be in the Broadway musical House of Flowers presented itself, allowing her to escape into the arms of another man. Carroll soon returned to New York to audition for the role of Ottilie in House of Flowers. During the audition, she met Monty Kaye, the casting director. Despite their differences, Carroll being black and Kaye being white, the two fell deeply in love. Unfortunately, this relationship also brought about many challenges. Carroll's father distrusted white people and even protested against her marriage, refusing to attend her wedding in 1956. Eventually, he accepted Carroll's decision, but it soon became clear that she wasn't ready for marriage. Accustomed to being treated like a princess, Carroll struggled to understand why Kaye didn't give her 100% of her attention all the time. During their honeymoon, Kaye briefly left Carroll alone to read a book, which caused Carroll to completely lose her temper. She threw a huge tantrum in the hotel, diving onto the bed and banging her fists against the walls. This shocked her new husband, yet despite this red flag in their relationship, they both kept trying to make it work. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out at all. 3 years into her marriage, Kaye encouraged Carroll to take on the role of Clara in the film Porgy and Bess. This decision turned Carroll's world upside down. While on the set of Porgy and Bess, she met Sidney Poitier, who, according to Carroll, exuded such commanding power that I felt completely unmoored in his presence. Aware that she was at risk of falling for this handsome man, Carroll actively avoided encountering him, even though her heart urged her otherwise. Eventually, her heart won out, leading to disaster. Carroll and Poitier began going on romantic getaways, which were indeed romantic, despite Carroll's desperate attempts to deny her feelings. Sensing her loss of control, Carroll tried to salvage her marriage by inviting Kaye to stay with her for 3 days in Hollywood. Ultimately, the two confessed their love for each other, but they didn't act on it, at least not immediately. Am I the only one who finds them actually really cute together? Carroll's strong sense of social justice led her to focus on more pressing issues. She found the film Porgy and Bess to be problematic on multiple levels. Professionally, the movie did not showcase her talents well. All of her singing was completely dubbed over. On a personal level, she was disturbed by the numerous cringeworthy racial stereotypes in the film. However, just a year after the film's release, Carroll had the opportunity to address this injustice with her role in Paris Blues, where her personal and professional lives intertwined. Shortly after filming Porgy and Bess, Diahann Carroll confided in her husband that she had fallen in love with Sidney Poitier. She even attempted to run away with him, but tragically, Poitier got cold feet at the last minute. Nonetheless, this was not the end of their encounters. Carroll soon got the opportunity to act in the film Paris Blues, which, much to her delight, offered a more nuanced portrayal of the lives of African Americans. As if this wasn't enough to create stress, Carroll and Kay decided to have a child in an attempt to save their marriage. On September 9th, 1960, Carroll gave birth to their daughter, Suzanne, whom both parents absolutely adored. However, Carroll couldn't shake her feelings for Poitier, and the fact that they worked together made it all too easy for her to fall more deeply in love with him. A few months after filming for Paris Blues wrapped up, everything began to unravel for Diahann Carroll. In a moment that must have felt surreal, Sidney Poitier confronted Carroll and her husband Kay after one of her shows. He told Kay directly that he loved Carroll and planned to divorce his wife. Poitier suggested that both Carroll and Kay should also get divorced, and surprisingly, Kay agreed. The two split amicably, and Carroll began dating Poitier. For a moment, everything seemed perfect, but disaster was just around the corner. In 1962, Diahann Carroll received the opportunity of a lifetime when the renowned Broadway composer Richard Rodgers invited her to star in his play No Strings. Carroll eagerly accepted the offer. For Carroll, this was an opportunity to work with the same man who wrote the song You've Got to Be Carefully Taught, which addressed issues of prejudice. The night before the opening of No Strings, Rodgers shared some shocking news with Carroll. The hostess of the cast's opening night party did not want her to attend. According to the hostess, it would confuse her children to see a black woman who was sophisticated and elegant because they don't exist. Yikes. To make matters worse, Rodgers, who had hired Carroll to be the show's leading lady, did not defend her. Needless to say, Carroll was not going to accept this treatment. She decided to host her own opening night party for the cast and made sure to invite everyone. She had her assistant reserve seats at a restaurant that was beloved by the entire cast, and everyone attended. In 1962, Carroll won a Tony Award for her role in No Strings.
I'm like Abe Burrows. I really wanted this.
Making her the first black woman to achieve this honor. Over the next 9 years, it gradually became clear to Carroll that being with Poitier was a mistake. He not only looked down on her career choices, but also repeatedly wavered on his promise to marry her. Eventually, Poitier refused to allow her daughter to live with them and even changed the locks on their apartment. After nearly a decade-long relationship, Carroll concluded that she and her daughter deserved much better than Poitier, and they decided to part ways. Did Carroll learn anything from the years she spent with this man? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Ironically, the success she achieved in one of her most famous roles only made her situation worse. In 1968, NBC Studios hired Carroll for the title role in the sitcom Julia. The show became a tremendous hit, garnering high ratings and introducing Carroll to millions of viewers. She was proud of the groundbreaking nature of the sitcom. Not only did Carroll become the first woman to portray an African American character who wasn't a domestic worker, but she also played a widowed single mother. It was a significant shift from some of her typical roles in the past, but Julia still found herself in a bit of hot water. As Diahann Carroll expressed, "I was under the political microscope for Julia like you wouldn't believe." While her breakthrough role did much to challenge stereotypes, it never directly addressed the political issues surrounding the life of African Americans. Unfortunately, Carroll faced intense criticism for this, with newspapers attempting to provoke her into criticizing either the show or black nationalist groups in America. Carroll managed to maintain her composure and skillfully avoided the traps set by journalists. Unfortunately, she couldn't achieve the same level of calm within her own home. Diahann Carroll went on to have other relationships, including one with Alan Marshall, whom she met while filming Julia. However, he was primarily interested in her wealth, which had come from the show's success. Carroll eventually grew tired of his admiration for money and decided to leave him, but it came at a high cost. After leaving, she returned home the next day with her daughter, where she found Marshall waiting for her. In a fit of rage, he assaulted her, shouting, "I will ruin your face!" This traumatic incident shook Carroll to her core and served as a wake-up call. She realized that she didn't have to tolerate such treatment from anyone and left him for good. Old habits are hard to break. For Diahann Carroll, it took several more missteps in her relationships with various men before she finally found happiness. Throughout this time, she continued to date men who were not good for her. The ongoing controversy surrounding her role in Julia eventually wore her down, leading her to request an early release from her contract after just 3 seasons. In 1973, Carroll married Fred Glusman, but their marriage lasted only a couple of months before they divorced due to Glusman's abusive behavior. Additionally, during the filming of Claudine in 1973, Carroll's friend Diana Sands became terminally ill with cancer. Sands struggled to meet the demands of the schedule and recommended Carroll for the role. Unfortunately, shortly before the movie's release in 1974, Carroll's friend passed away. Despite this tragedy, Carroll delivered a powerful performance as an African-American woman navigating the tough streets of Harlem, earning critical acclaim. However, this success also led her into another tumultuous relationship. The film Claudine not only earned Diahann Carroll an Oscar nomination in 1975, but also caught the attention of Robert DeLeon, the managing editor of Jet magazine. DeLeon exhibited obsessive behavior towards Carroll. After she lost the Oscar, Carroll flew back to Chicago, coincidentally sitting next to DeLeon on the flight. The two eventually got married, but it didn't take long for marital issues to surface. The primary concern for Carroll was money. Her new husband had a penchant for a lavish lifestyle, which pushed Carroll into debt. Ambitious and youthful, DeLeon eventually quit his job to open his own public relations office in Los Angeles, using Carroll's finances to support this venture. It's not surprising that this relationship ended quickly as well. Diahann Carroll still held significant influence within the community, and her new husband was aware of it. DeLeon found himself constantly on the verge of being known as Mr. Diahann Carroll, and the pressure of that identity drove him to drink excessively. Tragically, DeLeon lost his life in 1977 due to reckless driving, which sent Carroll spiraling out of control. For months, she isolated herself from the world, turning to alcohol to cope with the loss of her husband. In 1981, another handsome man entered her life. Would this finally be Carroll's happily ever after? Carroll met American pop singer Vic Damone during a show in San Juan, and the two instantly connected. 3 years after their initial meeting, Carroll joined the cast of the nighttime soap opera Dynasty as Dominique Devereaux, one of her most famous roles. Not only was Dynasty incredibly successful, but playing a villain felt liberating for Carroll. She came from an era where, for better or worse, society expected Black entertainers to serve as role models for the Black community. On set, Carroll frequently worked alongside Linda Evans and Joan Collins, the other leading ladies of Dynasty. Carroll soon recognized that while Collins had many admirable qualities, she had a strong desire to be the center of attention. To have a little fun at Collins' expense, Carroll convinced Evans to block Collins from walking between them during rehearsals for an awards show. This playful maneuver disrupted Collins' natural inclination to always be in the spotlight. Ironically, Carroll and Collins became close friends throughout the course of the show. Unfortunately, this closeness did not extend to Carroll's relationship with her new boyfriend. Although Carroll and Damone had a lot in common, they were fundamentally different in one important way. Damone had no interest in hard work. Eventually, Carroll began covering Damone's living expenses, even paying off his home in Palm Springs with her own money. Despite the red flags in their relationship, Carroll and Damone were deeply in love and began planning a wedding for 1987. However, their issues started to surface. Damone frequently disrupted Carroll's rehearsals, and after he missed yet another rehearsal in Atlantic City, Carroll had enough. In a fit of anger, she padlocked the door to their suite, locking Damone out. Despite facing numerous challenges, they eventually got married. However, their marriage was marked by significant issues, particularly Damon's intense jealousy toward Carroll. This jealousy escalated when Carroll starred in the hit musical Sunset Boulevard. As her face became prominent on billboards, Damon's envy deepened. His friends were unhappy with her rising fame and pressured her to remove the billboards. This situation became the breaking point for Carroll, leading her to decide to divorce him. After her divorce, she decided to focus on her career, appearing in shows like Grey's Anatomy and White Collar. Unfortunately, Diahann Carroll ended up suffering from breast cancer, and she passed away in 2019.
Two adjectives I think of when I think about you and your career: fearlessness and determination. Does that sound right?
Little innocence, little stupidity. It helps.